That afternoon, millionaire Alejandro Valdez returned home a few hours earlier than expected, without imagining what he was about to discover. Upon opening his kitchen door, the smell of spoiled food hit him, followed by the desperate sobs of his twin sons. On the floor, in stained pajamas, the children tried to eat what appeared to be leftovers, while his new wife Isabel screamed at them mercilessly. In 1 second, Alejandro's world stopped. What he saw that afternoon would change his life, and that of his entire family forever. What city are you watching this video from, and what time is it? By the way, if you're enjoying my videos, I'd be so happy if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. And before we continue, let me wish you health and peace. Tell me, from which country and at what time are you watching this story? The Boston wind blew through the cobblestone streets, moving the golden autumn leaves that fell on the old rooftops. The city seemed to breathe slowly, as if each stone remembered a different story. In the midst of that nostalgic silence, Mr. Alejandro Valdez drove his car across the bridge heading home. At 45 years old, he was a renowned architect, owner of a fortune and a carefully decorated loneliness. Since the death of his wife Elena, nothing sounded the same. Not the music, not the echo of laughter in the hallway, not the clattering of cups in the morning. That day had been long. On the radio played news about the fall festival, but Alejandro wasn't listening. His thoughts wandered between models and unfinished projects, trying to fill a void that professional success couldn't cover. Upon stopping at a traffic light, he saw through the fogged window the silhouette of a woman picking up blueprints that had fallen from her briefcase. He got out of the car instinctively to help her. "Let me, please," she said with a kind smile. "I don't want to cause you trouble." "It's no trouble," he responded, bending down to pick up the papers. "It's rare to find someone who treats blueprints with such care. They say architects always look at the sky, but I prefer to look into eyes," the woman added. And her words remained floating in the air like a melody. Her name was Isabel Torres. She came from Miami. She said she worked in interior design. She was 34 years old and had a natural elegance, the kind that seems to need no effort. Talking with her was like opening a window after years of confinement. In the following days, they coincided several times at the Harbor Cafe, near the Charles River, or at the market where Isabel bought flowers and talked with vendors with charm. Little by little, conversation became habit, and habit became necessity. Carmen Morales, the housekeeper who had raised the twins, observed everything with caution. She knew the wounds Alejandro hid behind his blue tie. "I just hope that woman doesn't come to fill the void with shadows," she murmured more than once while preparing the children's hot chocolate. A month later, Alejandro and Isabel married discreetly at Trinity Church. There were no guests, only the children, Carmen and the echo of the bells. Antonio and Diego, barely 5 years old, looked at their new stepmother with a mixture of shyness and curiosity. Isabel gently caressed their cheeks, but her smile seemed to be playing a learned role. Alejandro, noticing nothing, took her hand and whispered, "Thank you for bringing joy back to us." That night, the house filled with lights. The twins ran through the hallway in their new pajamas, and Carmen sighed seeing them happy, though something in her eyes remained uneasy. Alejandro, for the first time in years, sat at the living room piano and played a soft melody. Isabel, standing by the window, watched the rain fall on the glass. When everyone slept, she got up stealthily. In front of the vanity mirror, she removed her pearl earrings, looked at herself fixedly, and smiled with a different gleam. "Now yes, everything will be mine," she whispered as she turned off the light. And the house, without knowing it, fell silent again. Boston dawned wrapped in a thick fog that made the city seem like a painting in black and white. Inside the Valdez mansion, the smell of freshly brewed coffee tried to disguise the atmosphere of tension that had gradually settled since the wedding. Isabel served breakfast with an impeccable smile while the twins shifted in their chairs, watching her cautiously. "Antonio, Diego, eat slowly," she said with a soft voice. But when Alejandro stood up to leave for work, her tone changed like lightning cutting the sky. "And you clean the table. I don't want to see a single crumb." The children lowered their heads without responding. From the door, Carmen observed, feeling a knot in her chest. The house seemed to have two faces, one luminous when Alejandro was there, and another dark when he crossed the gate. That Tuesday, Alejandro had to travel to New York for a construction meeting. Isabel said goodbye with a long, sweet kiss, feigning tenderness. As soon as the car disappeared down the avenue, she took off her heels, let out a sigh of impatience and shouted, "Clean everything! I don't want toys or noise." Antonio and Diego ran to their room. Isabel walked behind them with firm steps, her expensive perfume leaving a bitter trail in the air. "What did I tell you about leaving your shoes out?" she asked, picking one up from the floor. "You're disobedient." The children tried to apologize, but their words drowned in fear. Carmen returned early from the market and noticed something strange. The house was in absolute silence. She entered the kitchen and saw 2 plates with cold food remains and a trash can full of damp bread. She went up the stairs and in the hallway found the twins asleep on the floor, hugging each other. On their cheeks remained traces of dried tears. Isabel appeared behind her with a forced smile. "Ah, Carmen, they were playing. I already sent them to rest." "On the floor?" she asked, containing her rage. "Yes, on the floor. Children need to learn discipline." Carmen bit her lips. She knew something was wrong, but had no proof. She decided to stay longer in the house to watch. In the afternoon, while tidying the living room, she saw Isabel seated on the sofa with her phone in hand. On the screen, a photo of the sleeping children next to a text. That night, when Isabel went up to her room, Carmen approached the twins. "My little ones, is everything all right?" Antonio looked at her with big eyes full of fear. "The lady said if Dad finds out, he'll take us to the orphanage." Carmen hugged them tightly. "No, sweetheart. Nobody's going to take you from this house." The next day, Alejandro called from New York. Isabel answered with a honeyed voice. "Everything's fine, love. The children miss you." She hung up and without releasing the phone looked at the twins. "See? He didn't even ask what you had for breakfast. He has more important things than you." The words stuck in the children like invisible needles. In the study, while drawing, Diego dropped a pencil and said in a low voice, "Carmen, do you think Mom sees us from heaven?" She smiled sadly. "Of course, and she's very proud of you." When night fell, the mansion remained in shadow. Alejandro wouldn't return until Thursday. Isabel walked through the hallway with a glass of wine, satisfied, while the turned-on television showed a perfume commercial. Her laughter mixed with the music, as sweet as it was poisonous. From the kitchen, Carmen heard a murmur. "Quiet, Antonio. If Dad finds out, he won't love you anymore." Then she understood that the true silence of that house wasn't lack of noise, but the fear that filled everything. That Thursday dawned with a fine rain that covered Boston in a pearly gray tone. The church bells sounded distant and the air smelled of wet earth. Alejandro Valdez, exhausted from days of meetings in New York, decided to return earlier than expected. He had dreamed of the twins, of their laughter, of his wife Elena's voice telling him, "Listen, they need you." That phrase resonated in his mind as he took the highway back home. He didn't notify anyone. He wanted to surprise them, see them without poses, without prepared smiles. The clock marked 6:30 in the evening when the black car crossed the gate. Rain fell steadily, soaking the garden pavement. From outside, the mansion seemed calm, too calm. Alejandro entered slowly, left his coat on the vestibule chair and heard something that made him stop. A choked sob, the blow of a sharp voice in the kitchen. "Eat, you useless children," Isabel screamed. "It's more than you deserve." Alejandro approached without making noise. From the half-open door, he saw his children on the floor in dirty pajamas, hunched in front of 2 metal plates with remains of rotten food. Their small hands trembled. Isabel, impeccable in a designer red dress, looked at them with an expression of contempt. "Stop crying like puppies," she added, pushing one of the plates with the tip of her shoe. "You're a punishment I didn't ask for." Alejandro's heart stopped. For an instant he couldn't move, as if time had frozen. Then he pushed the door and his voice thundered throughout the house. "Isabel, what the hell are you doing?" She turned pale, surprised. Her face changed in a second, from hatred to feigned sweetness. "Alejandro, I didn't know you'd returned. It's not what it seems." "I swear!" Antonio stood up staggering and ran toward his father. "Dad, she says Mom died because we were ugly," he stammered, sobbing. "That you don't love us." Alejandro fell to his knees, hugging the 2 little ones tightly. He smelled their hair, felt the cold skin of their cheeks, and a guilt that pierced him like a knife. "Forgive me, son. Forgive me," he whispered. I had no idea what was happening. Isabel stepped back, trying to compose her role. "He's exaggerating. Those children are spoiled. I was just trying to teach them respect." Alejandro looked up. He was no longer the calm man or the rational architect. In his eyes was fire. "What you've taught here is fear." He stood up slowly. "I want you out of my house." "You can't throw me out," Isabel screamed, trembling. "I'm your wife." "No, Isabel, you're a mistake." His voice was firm, low, like the sound of distant thunder. She tried to approach, but the children hid behind their father. Then, in an impulse of rage and shame, Isabel threw the glass she had on the counter. The crystal broke into 1,000 pieces, mixing with the children's tears and the noise of rain hitting the windows. Carmen, who was returning from the supermarket, heard the screams from the garden. She ran inside and saw the scene. Alejandro standing protecting the little ones, Isabel motionless in her stained red dress, and on the floor the rusty plates with food remains. "Good heavens," Carmen murmured, covering her mouth. Isabel ran toward the main door, but before leaving turned one last time. "You'll regret this, Alejandro. Nobody humiliates me like this." The door slammed shut, letting in a gust of cold air. Alejandro hugged his children, who cried in silence. Carmen knelt at his side. "Sir, what happened?" "Everything," he responded. "Everything I didn't want to see." On the floor, among the glass fragments, gleamed a lit mobile phone. The screen showed a folder titled Punishments. Alejandro took it with trembling hands, opened the first file, a photo of his children sleeping on the floor, another of them eating soaked bread, and a voice note with Isabel's cruel laughter, tears mixed with the rain entering through the open window. "Never again," he said, hugging Antonio and Diego. "Never again will I leave you alone." Carmen covered them with a blanket and took them to the sofa. Outside, Boston's lights flickered through the rain. Inside the house, silence returned, but it was no longer the same as before. It was the silence of someone who has just awakened from a long blindness. The following morning dawned with a gray sky and dense silence. The rain had ceased, but the air remained humid, as if the house itself cried for what had occurred the previous night. Alejandro Valdez hadn't slept. He spent the entire night in his study, looking again and again at the phone screen Isabel had left behind. The images seemed unreal. In one, Antonio could be seen cleaning the floor with a sponge almost the size of his hand. In another, Diego held a broken plate with red eyes and stained cheeks. In the audio files, Isabel's voice could be heard clearly, cruel, laughing while the children sobbed. "My God," Alejandro whispered with labored breathing. "How did I not see this before?" Carmen entered with a tray of coffee and cookies. She observed him in silence. Her face showed exhaustion, but also a firm serenity. "Sir, I've called the doctor to check the children. They're sleeping but exhausted." Alejandro nodded without looking up from the phone. "I don't understand at what moment my house became this." He dropped the phone on the desk. "Everything was in front of me and I didn't want to see." Carmen approached and put a hand on his shoulder. "Don't punish yourself anymore, Mr. Alejandro. What's important is that you've awakened." He looked at her with moist eyes. "Awakening doesn't erase the damage." The woman breathed deeply. "Maybe not, but it can prevent it from repeating." By mid-morning, lawyer Marcelo Andrade arrived, a friend from university. He brought a folder and a grave expression. "Alejandro, this won't be easy, but if the evidence is real, we'll get Isabel to answer before the law." "I want justice," he said with a firm voice. "Not for me, but for my children." Marcelo reviewed the files and recordings. "This is enough to file an immediate complaint, but you'll have to prepare for the process. Isabel will try to deny everything." Alejandro clenched his fists. "Denying won't erase my children's crying." Meanwhile, Carmen washed the little one's clothes. Upon removing the last sheet, she found hidden among the blankets a children's notebook. On the cover, Antonio had drawn 3 figures, a tall man, 2 children, and a son behind them. She opened the pages and read with tears in her eyes. "Mom is in heaven, but Dad will love us again." She took the notebook to the study. Alejandro took it with trembling hands. "I didn't know they wrote this," he whispered. "Children understand more than we believe." Carmen responded softly. But they also forgive faster. At noon, the doctor examined the twins. He confirmed they had no serious injuries, though there were signs of stress and lack of sleep. They'll need time, affection, and a lot of patience, he said as he left the room. When afternoon fell, the mansion remained calm. The children slept together, hugging. Alejandro returned to his study, opened the phone one last time, and listened to an audio he hadn't yet played. Isabel's voice filled the room. The children cry, but in the end they obey. They don't know that fear is stronger than love. His heart stopped. He hit the desk with his fist. "Enough!" he exclaimed with contained rage. "No more lies, no more fear." He took the phone and dialed. "Marcelo, start the procedures. I don't want money or properties. I just want this woman to never come near any child again." On the other side, the lawyer responded, "I'll call you early tomorrow. But prepare yourself. Justice is slow, Alejandro." He looked out the window. The rain returned light, almost imperceptible. "Then let it begin today," he murmured. That night, before going to bed, he went to the twins' room. He observed them sleep with calm breathing. Carmen, seated in a chair next to the bed, smiled at him. "Look, sir, little Diego doesn't let go of his brother's hand even when he dreams." Alejandro approached, caressed both their hair, and whispered, "I promise you'll never feel fear under this roof again." Carmen, with contained tears, responded, "God hear you, sir, because justice is slow, but it always arrives." Outside, the sky briefly illuminated with lightning. Night fell silent again. A different silence, that of a house beginning to heal. 2 weeks had passed since that storm that changed everything. The Valdez mansion, once full of fear and silence, now breathed a fragile calm. The smell of disinfectant mixed with that of toasted bread. Toys returned to occupy the living room's corners. Alejandro made an effort each day to recompose the routine, but he knew the damage wasn't healed with words or gifts. That morning, he took Antonio and Diego to the office of Dr. Marina Santos, a child psychologist recommended by a colleague in Boston. The building was near Faneuil Hall, and from the window the city hall clock could be seen. The children walked slowly, holding hands. Carmen accompanied them, always vigilant, like a silent grandmother. "Good morning, Mr. Alejandro," Marina greeted with a serene voice. "Please come in." The office was welcoming, full of colorful drawings, books, and a fish tank with orange fish. The twins stared at the water while Marina crouched down to be at their height. "Here there are no homework or punishments," she said, smiling. "We only talk and paint. Do you like to draw?" Diego nodded timidly. Antonio, on the other hand, hid behind his father. "We can start whenever you want," the doctor added. "I'm also afraid sometimes." That phrase was enough to break the barrier. The children sat in front of a blank page. Marina offered them colored pencils. "Draw what you remember about your house," she proposed gently. Antonio drew a woman in a red dress with black tears falling from her face. Diego painted a sun, but in a dark corner placed 2 small figures behind a door. Marina observed without interrupting. Afterward, she asked them to tell what they had painted. "She screamed a lot," Antonio said in a low voice, "and said Dad didn't love us." Diego added, "But Carmen did. She hugged us when we were afraid." Alejandro, seated in the back, clenched his hands. Each word was a soft but accurate blow. Marina looked at him with understanding. "Children don't need perfection, Mr. Alejandro," she said. "Only presence." Upon leaving, Antonio took his hand. "Dad, will you always stay?" He crouched down and responded with a trembling voice. "Always, son. I promise." The following days, the visits repeated. The twins began to talk more, to laugh. They drew landscapes with trees, an imaginary dog, and a house without shadows. Marina used games to strengthen trust, and Alejandro learned to observe without fear of failing. One rainy afternoon, Marina asked them to record a small message for the court, something that would help close the judicial process against Isabel. "Only if you want," she said. "Nobody will force you." Antonio looked at his brother and nodded. In front of the small camera, with still uncertain voice, he said, "We want other children not to be afraid." Diego added, "And for dads to listen when someone cries." Alejandro couldn't contain his tears. Carmen at his side took his hand. "Look, sir, sometimes the smallest ones are those who teach the grown-ups." That night at home, the children insisted on watching the video. They laughed seeing themselves on screen, surprised by their own bravery. When they went to sleep, Alejandro remained alone in the living room, looking at the phone where the video played once more. His children's voices were like a new melody, a mixture of fragility and hope. "This time there will be no silence," he whispered. Turning off the light, he went up to their rooms and kissed them on the forehead. In the hallway, Carmen waited for him with a calm smile. "You know, Mr. Alejandro," she said, "sometimes love isn't measured in what we say, but in what we choose to repair." He nodded slowly with shining eyes. "I choose to repair this family," he responded. Outside, rain continued falling on Boston's golden stones. But inside the house, for the first time in a long while, there was a warmth that didn't come from the lamps, but from the heart. 3 years had passed since that day when the storm fell on the Valdez mansion. Time, with its silent passage, had transformed wounds into scars and memories into lessons. Boston breathed spring, balconies full of geraniums, the sound of guitars in the squares, and a warm air that smelled of freshly baked bread. The house, once a symbol of pain, now open to the sun with open windows and laughter that escaped through the hallways. Alejandro Valdez had learned to live without hurry. He no longer wore a suit on Sundays, or reviewed blueprints at dawn. Instead, he prepared breakfast with help from his children who grew healthy and happy. Antonio played guitar, Diego preferred painting, and both competed over who made the best hot chocolate with donuts. That morning, Carmen Morales watched them from the dining room table, wrapped in her blue apron. She had aged a bit, but her smile remained the same, patient and protective. "I never thought I'd hear so much laughter in this house again," she said while serving coffee. Alejandro responded with tenderness. "You were the one who kept the flame lit when everything was going out." The doorbell sound interrupted the conversation. Marina Santos, the psychologist, appeared at the door with a box of pastries. She was no longer just the doctor who helped the twins. She was part of the family, a serene presence who had known how to fill silences with affection. "I brought something to celebrate," she said, smiling. "Today marks the 3rd anniversary of your first session." Antonio ran to hug her. Diego proudly showed a painting he had made, an illuminated house under the sun with 4 smiling figures. "Look, Marina, there are no more shadows," he said. She caressed his head, moved. "That's because you already know how to light your own light." After breakfast, Alejandro withdrew for a moment to the study. On the table was a letter from lawyer Marcelo Andrade. He opened it calmly and read, "The court has issued a final sentence. Isabel Torres will serve 10 years in prison without possibility of reduction." For a long instant, Alejandro said nothing. Then he breathed deeply, folded the letter and put it away in a drawer. "Justice has arrived," Carmen said with a low voice, "and with it peace." In the afternoon, they organized a small party in the interior patio. There were strings of lights, soft music, and the aroma of Spanish omelet that Carmen prepared each year. Neighbors looked out curiously, attracted by the joy. Marina tuned the guitar while the children ran with balloons. When the sun began to set, Antonio approached his father with a drawing. On the paper, a phrase written in childish handwriting said, "Dad, thank you for coming back." Alejandro read it with clouded eyes. He crouched down, hugged his children, and murmured, "Before I designed houses, now I build a home." The guitar sounded and everyone began to sing a simple melody. Carmen clapped to the rhythm, Marina laughed, and the children danced on the grass. The house vibrated with life, and the lights reflected in the windows seemed like stars trapped in glass. Upon finishing the song, Alejandro raised his gaze toward the sky. For a moment he believed he saw Elena, his wife, smiling from somewhere among the clouds. He didn't feel sadness, but gratitude. He knew she would be proud of the path traveled. The wind blew through Boston's golden stones, as if the city itself celebrated that rebirth. Antonio took the guitar and with a clear voice said, "Dad, now the house has music again." Alejandro closed his eyes and listened to the sound of the strings, the laughter, the wind's murmur. Everything mixed into a single melody. That of a family that had learned that true forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but illuminates the future. And while night descended softly over the city, the Valdez mansion left its shadows behind, because there, where once there was fear, now there was love, and where silence reigned, music was born again. Music was born again. In the Valdez house, there are no more shadows, only the soft echo of guitars and the aroma of freshly baked bread that escapes through open windows. 3 years were enough to transform sadness into a new melody. Alejandro, the twins, Carmen and Marina, learned that true architecture isn't measured in walls or blueprints, but in the embraces that sustain the soul. And now that life has music again, perhaps we too can hear something within our own silence. If this story has reached your heart, comment the number 1. And if you believe it could improve, leave a 0 and tell us why. Your voice is also part of this family, because in the end, this tale isn't just about Alejandro or his children, but about all of us who at some point stumbled with our own errors and found the courage to start anew. True love isn't bought or inherited. It's built day by day with patience, with humility, and with the will to forgive. Second chances exist, but you have to open the door for them to enter. Like a lamp lit by the window in the middle of the night, a gesture of kindness can guide us through life's darkest hallways. So before sleeping tonight, think about what you've built with your people, about the hands that accompany you, about the voice that still waits for you on the other side of the table. And if this story reminded you that it's still possible to heal, share this message with someone who needs to believe again in family, in hope, in love. Because happiness isn't in what we possess, but in what we're capable of repairing with the heart.